So we'll bring to you another very interesting session on global challenges, local solutions, bridging nations through humanitarian democracy. So guys, let's put our hands together first for Mr. Vijay Kant Karna, who has been the former ambassador from Nepal to Denmark. So I welcome you on the stage. Next would be renowned author Bishwa Parajuli. Please welcome on the stage. Further on, I would like to invite IPS Lalit Dasji. Welcome, sir. And finally, it would be Mr. Ranjit Rai, who's been the former ambassador from Nepal to India. So I believe he's yet to India to Nepal. Okay, my bad. So guess he's yet to join. So maybe we can start. Also, I would like to extend a welcome to Kamla Kandas, who will be our moderator for this session. Okay. So let's welcome him too with a round of applause.
Ambassador Roy was here, perhaps. Can someone just send him the message? If someone can go volunteer. So we wanted to start, and then hopefully that Ambassador Roy will join soon. So should we wait or start? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Start. Is he taking the phone? Volunteers, can you just reach outside, maybe at the dining area there? So we have sent the message. He's not picking up at the moment, but we'll start. If he joins in between, that'll be great. Right. Okay. Um, Welcome to the post-lunch afternoon session. This is a very important, interesting topic. Global challenges, local solutions. We have increasingly used the word glocal now. GLOCAL. So yet Oxford University Dictionary has to accept that word. Uh, Global challenges, local solutions, bridging nations through humanitarian diplomacy. Right. So we have talked about hard power, soft power, and within soft power there have been cultural diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy cuts across the this discourse on power. Humanitarian, the very term comes from human. So you or me being human, connecting to each other, especially during crisis, either political, economic, climate, violence, in whatever way. So can being human connect us each other, connect all of us together? That is one question. There is no doubt its answer would be yes. First point. Second point, on the name of humanitarian diplomacy, humanitarian intervention has happened in several ways. In the humanitarian intervention, the pretext is human right protection, dignity protection, giving them the voice, and keeping them safe and secure. Point number three, can humanitarian intervention be used as a pretext to enter into a country and attack, which has happened in cases of Afghanistan and Iraq? Right, wrong, history is judging them. No final decision or call has been made. But there has been a lot of criticism on the world's sole superpower, United States, talking about humanitarian diplomacy, or other words, promoting democracy, or in other words, intervening for regime change. So why I'm putting this controversial few points before we start to talking about what role actually humanitarian diplomacy plays in bridging the global local connection and creating the humanitarian bond that we have been talking about in the civilization that this region is known for. So in the Sanskrit, in some in a slok it says that ayam nijam paraveti gananam laguchetasam udara hrudayanancha vasudhaiva kutumbakam. So if vasudhaiva kutumbakam is the idea, how to make that kutum work? So is it a fictional, utopian, idealistic idea of family, world village, world community? Or is it possible really to create a world human society, which League of Nations failed, United Nations increasingly failing, especially if you ask United Nations Security Council, what is their success rate in stopping dastardly violence? The success rate is not much. Anyway, so we'll come back to that. But point is, I am putting this mosaic of ideas into one. Global challenges are there. One is migration, climate change, food security. Anyway, as the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals actually encapsulates what challenges we are going through. And solution has to be localized, whether through entrepreneurship, whether through technological integration, and whether to connect to human beings to human beings. Coming back to discussion, and I would like to start with Bisho Parajuli sir, because you are someone who has worked in the ecosystem. to start with your initial. So what will the format? The format will be like round robin league. We'll come back to each other. So your initial 5 minutes. What do you think?
Thank you very much. You hear me?
Yeah.
It's really nice to have this topic, humanitarianism, in the context of literature, as you nicely linked up. We are all human, and therefore, an element of humanitarianism comes from that. Going straight to the point, the principle, there is a principle of humanitarianism which is followed, which is humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. There are four principles all humanitarian follows. And pushing the issue of democracy is not part of humanitarian. So just to put you spot there, it's not correct. Always humanitarian support is life saving. It is saving life. That is going towards humanity. And indeed, once the human connect each other, we achieve a lot together. And that's where an element of diplomacy comes in. I have been involved in around the world in several humanitarian crises with the UN system, leading these coordination efforts as well. And I would say the various life-saving efforts, the humanitarian support is the point of food, water, sanitation, shelter, education, health, protection. These are the things principally promoted. And of course, if there are logistics support, technology, that all comes in. The principle humanitarian follow is, of course, always looking at first element of life saving, but then subsequently integrating and bringing a sustainable solution. The issue of the SDGs and etc. It's a second phase of the first is principle is life saving. In fact, sadly, war, conflicts, climate change, and they have, and then economic crisis at times are causing increased amount of humanitarian crisis globally. In the last 10 years, compared to previous 10 years, the climate change alone has doubled the humanitarian crisis. And if we look at it in the last few months, or we could take 2 years time frame, 7-8 million people displaced Ukraine. Sudan alone recently had 1 million people because of the infighting moving on. So it goes on and on. Afghanistan, the UN system makes an appeal. International organization, ICRC, all play a very important role in humanitarian support. But I would say when the first crisis happens is the community, the locals, the neighbors. They are the first responded. I was in Myanmar 2008-11, and they had the largest cyclone, killing 130,000 people, and 3 million people were displaced. It's the Burmese, Myanmari people who helped to save life supported. And subsequently, there was a lot of conversation, discussion to help save lives with the basic food and other shelter need. So therefore, and then that led to opening up the society and more engagement, so on and so forth. Now, I was until a few months back in India. We had a cooperation with the World Food Program and Government of India to support Afghan people with 60,000 tons of food aid from India. There are so many examples like these. And indeed, I would say uh, um, humanitarian diplomacy works because we're dealing with sovereign government. So therefore, it's that four principle I mentioned, focused by commitment, build trust and confidence, help moving forward.
Set closer to the.
Okay, the last point I want to touch on the issue of Vasudeva Kutumba. I think humanity still exists when there is a crisis around the world, and therefore I believe in it, uh, over 300, 400 million people are depending on humanitarian life-saving support need at the moment. That happens with the global solidarity that is Vasudeva Kutumba, including India and many other countries, join in support.
Little closer to you.
Sorry?
The microphone.
Sorry. So maybe the last point I want to say is, indeed, we have a challenge with the UN Security Council. Why we have the challenge? Because the world is polarized, more and more problem. It's not the UN which is the problem, it's the member state who is the problem. So easy target UN, you fail, but they don't see who is behind, who is failing it. So name those who have been behind it. Name those who have been creating conflict in this world. I think we should just being diplomatic and not blaming is not correct. And so let me stop it here. Thank you.
I think I have been deliberately provocative.
That's fine. No worries.
Okay. So democracy promotion was used one of the ideas that will interfere, change the regime, and create democracy. Anyway, so taking the discussion forward, and I think I agree with the bigger point that even as an institution may not have failed, whether it is United Nations Development Program, there are several things which are been doing well, but United Nations Security Council, when it comes to conflict resolution and conflict management, it has not been doing well. So that is.
So actually, if I could
closer to yourself.
if I could lastly say it,
Closer.
there are over 100 million people who are displaced at this moment, and they are being fed every day. They have been vaccinated. The children are going to school, and they have shelters. This is all through the UN work, civil society work, and its humanitarianism, which is supporting. Vaccination. Many countries during the whole crisis, look at it. The rich country kept it to themselves. The others spread it and supported it. Lots of things are happening through humanitarianism. And if it wasn't there, I would say millions of children will go hungry, women will go hungry. And also in the broad context of development, there is a lot of work happening through the development. Maybe there are challenges, but you take that out and you'll see the vacuum, what happens.
Yeah. I think your point merits attention, see the bigger picture. Dr. Lalit Das, you have been a police officer, also an administrator, someone who has got international experience, someone who has worked in conflict resolution. How do you see when we give, say, global challenges can have local solutions, and through that we can connect across borders?
Thank you, Kamalakant. This is globalization. You told this word was coined in 1980, late 1980. So always we say, think global, act local. So to think local, like climate change, you told, if I want to stop climate change, then at the local level, I should plant a tree or to reduce my consumption pattern.
Carbon footprint.
Suppose I say resource depletion, then again I have to minimize my consumption, or plastic pollution. Then also I have to do waste minimization or produce less plastic. But at the same time, we should have a shared vision goal. Problem today's world is not having shared vision and the shared goals. So if I would like to have a shared vision, then I have to take all nations together, all the countries together. Therefore, it comes like the friendly diplomacy. But to get a shared vision of the goal, we need partnership. If there is no partnership, then I will not have a synergy. 1 to 1 is more than 2. That synergy will come only when I partner with other countries, other individuals. Therefore, the point is that to take care of each other. in this world, sometimes we called about global village, that we have to take care of each other. And to take care of each other, then I have to depend on the diversity of the globe. I have to take leverage of strength of each other. So in this world, I say today's world is win and lose. I win, you lose. But to have a better world, we should have a win-win situation. And to have a win-win situation, I think we have to partner with each other, other countries, take their strengths, and have a talent pool. Then we should have uh, innovation. All these things should come together.
Sorry, just to interrupt. When you said shared vision, do you think SDG provides us a shared vision at the global and local level?
Always UNDP, they have a SDG, but then the vision is good, but then the participation is important. So when it comes to participation, then today's world is de-globalized.
That's
Like
just one more point. In the middle time now, by 2030, we're in the middle of the SDGs to be implemented. Now they're saying localization of SDGs is the only way. So that I think the topic makes sense here. But as we will be going towards humanitarian intervention and diplomacy, in that sense, how do you see SDG being aligned to that? I think SDG encapsulates everything.
like in India also, when you do government policies, our goal is SDG. So in what way we have to achieve SDG? Uh, but then biggest challenge is the whole globe has to come together. Now we see a divided world. That is the biggest problem today, whether it is climate change or to stop military conflicts. Therefore, this local individual level initiatives which can make a right political will, so that in future we will be again a global village and achieve together. So I say there is that story goes, the hunter came and laid a net, and all the birds came and stuck together. But then all the birds took a decision to fly together. Okay, so that decision to fly together to have a shared vision or goal is required. If some birds will not fly, then the goal is not achieved. Okay.
Thank you. We'll come back to you in the next. Uh, Sir, I'll just mic to you. You have represented and gone to the world. You have done work in administration, in foreign policy and diplomacy. How do you see localization? What is the localization challenge? We have idea. Now someone is saying, someone said globalization, some said deglobalization, now saying reglobalization. So but in that context, where is localization and how humanitarian diplomacy is important there?
Look, one very important thing in diplomacy, there is a very less chances of idealism. When you were talking about the humanitarianism and diplomacy, what I found that it is something very unusual. Look, diplomatic, they believe in the realism. The diplomats, if you see the from Machiavelli to today's even Henry Kissinger or anybody who worked with that, so ideology has a little role in that regard. When it comes to the look at the situation today's world, Afghanistan, see Syria, Iraq, if you see Myanmar, the Rohingyas, see in the China, the Tibet, Uyghurs and Tibetan people are suffering, but who care?
Just one
Just
interjection, sir. During the COVID-19, India's vaccine diplomacy was considered one of the examples.
I'm coming to
humanitarian
the
diplomacy.
point. I was supposed to speak on that one also. But what I see that these are the people are suffering, not today's. And Mr. Ranjit is coming.
Ambassador Ranjit Ray. Thank you.
So we are waiting. No, it's all right. No problem. So it's today's word. You see that the many of the humanitarian crises not created by the nature. It's created by the human being, and there are solutions there. There are there are solutions of each and every problem, but due to political power, due to hunger of power, that these problems are not solved. So the crisis, today's world, we are talking about the deglobalization, but now I am seeing that the world is heading towards another type of Cold War between China and USA. And then we are looking at our two neighbors, the China and India. They have been also competing on regional and international forum. So look, as Mr. Parajuli told you that there are solutions. UN is working. There are many humanitarian organizations. What we observed during the COVID vaccine was not fairly distributed. Those
Agree.
superpower, those who have, they stopped giving the COVID to the country like Nepal, and we suffered much. And so at the time, we couldn't get it. And even from some of the big rich countries, they have a huge number of the vaccine at the time, but they didn't distribute it. So we, Nepalese, like Nepal and other small countries, has suffered much on the COVID vaccine. And vaccine diplomacy was very inhuman and cruel. Some of the countries we signed national, non-disclosure agreement for the vaccine. And the price is such a high, even the price of the today's market price is 20, 30 times more than that of we paid. We paid, Nepal government paid, and yet not disclosed the prices. So what we have seen that in the realist world, today's or even the past, we see that in international fora, might is right. That prevail everywhere, even in UN. Look, the situation of the Ukraine, a small country attacked by a big neighbors. Can it justify? And they are suffering. Their food is stopped. They couldn't send food. And that is affected to other European and African as well as
The
all
whole
over
world.
the world.
The whole world.
Yeah, all over the world. So that is how I'm telling you that the Russia declared unilateral backtrack from the food agreement. And that has been affected all over the world. Look, the Rohingyas, more than 1 million Rohingyas are lying in Bangladesh. They are suffering cold, hot, everything. They are suffering miserable conditions there. And look at the Tibetan people. They are roaming all over the world for their rights. And they have been now at the China has started a DNA test and to find out and changing the DNA of the Tibetan people. Same with the Uyghurs. They have been kept in they have been kept like a Hitler kept people in the camp. And they are indoctrinated the people against these their own belief. The mosques were destroyed, many of the monasteries in Tibetan, and they have been controlled by the Han people. So there are such things are there.
So when you are highlighting these striking, realist-backed activities by states, are you saying humanitarian diplomacy is a casualty, or doesn't happen because of the contest that happens between powers?
Look, I do believe that the humanitarian human issues UN system is intact. Because if the UN completely fails, then there is a war all over the world. There may be another war, world war. So I do believe that it works. But what I'm looking at the world that there are challenges that are rising, conflict are getting in different parts of the world. Look at the Africa, Nigeria,
Right.
the military coup. And all these areas have been affected. There is a need of those who believe the people in humanitarian need to revive the campaign of humanitarian campaign for the values of the human life. So that dignity, human rights, democratic principles that need to be campaigned by the people who believe
Right. Thank you. Welcome, Ambassador Roy. Uh, how do you see, because the title of the session has been kept globalization, I think I'm reading it again, global challenges and local solutions, bridging nations through humanitarian diplomacy. And three panelists in their brief introductory statement have highlighted that United Nations system works. And now we have a point that a realist the theory and practice actually pushes states how to work for their own interest. In that context, how do you see when humanitarian challenges are emerging, not just because of war, but with climate change and other things? So what inhibits states to collaborate at a global level for humanitarian intervention? Intervention is a bad word, maybe humanitarian partnership for creating localized solutions. Now, just one more point. Sustainable development goals in the middle part now. Now, United Nations is thinking only ways to achieve some part of SDGs, which is, looks unrealistic at times, is by effective localization. So humanitarian solutions also can be created at the local level when there is trust and when there is perhaps a shared vision, what Lalit sir said. What do you think, sir?
Well, first of all, I do want to apologize to everyone here. I was, somewhat late in coming
Little
here.
closer, sir.
Yeah. So apologies for that. Secondly, I think from global to local, there is some in-between element also, and I would say that's regional. And I say that from my own experience of the earthquake that happened in Nepal, where India was, the largest and the fastest responder. So there are various levels of humanitarian modalities for assistance. And of course, local is critical because local not only involves efforts to overcome the disasters, and build back better and so on in the context of earthquakes. But I think local is very important in terms of preventive efforts to make sure that these disasters are mitigated if they can't be removed completely. And whether you spoke
For
about climate
resilience as well.
Yeah. So certainly local is extremely important. It's the most critical element in this whole scenario. Third point I wanted to make is that you see, in the international debate on this, there has been a question of humanitarian intervention, as you referred to, and the question of sovereignty. So some of the Western countries, and especially I'm referring to the then Prime Minister of the UK, Tony Blair, had made a very important speech many years ago where he said that they have a human right to intervene under certain conditions in a third country. And I think that was deeply disturbing to many countries, especially in the developing world.
I think the R2P also emerged out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a lot of controversy about this because this basically, you see, I mean, even human rights, for instance, if you study the behavior of some of the Western countries that talk about human rights in their international diplomacy, a lot of the time it is linked to their own interests. So where they have interests, human rights become less salient. Where they don't have interests, human rights become very important in terms of how they deal with the government concerned. So I think this was a very, very controversial issue. So I think when we talk about humanitarian assistance, I think we, at least in the South, in the global South, think of it as a partnership, as a collaboration, as something that is done in consonant and fully with the support of the host government. It's not something that is being done imposed from outside. And I think that is really the way to go if you want to be effective. And the last point I wanted to make, see, multilateral institutions have been extremely affected. I'm sure Mr. Parajuli has spoken about it. But, in our regions, I mean, I'll give you the instance of Chandrayaan that has just gone to the moon. The total cost that India has spent on the Chandrayaan is 1/4 the cost that Russia has spent. 1/4. And it's probably 1/10 or 1/20th of what the Americans spend. So I personally feel that if you go local and regional, then the same dollar will go much further away you'll get much more value for the same dollar than if you do it through some other modus. So I think these were some of the points I wanted to make. Very important, of course, I think the convening role of the United Nations, but the United Nations has to work in concert with the local government, with the regional powers, and I think that's what the Secretary General is trying very much to do, even on things like peacekeeping, for instance. That of course, you have UN peacekeeping, but a lot of emphasis is now being given on regional peacekeeping operations. So that really is the way to go forward. And I know that on a sub-regional level basis, we are doing a lot. Sorry, I've been going on too long. Last point, I think the organizations involved in providing humanitarian assistance, and I think the military has a very critical role to play. And so it's very important to have excellent military diplomacy and military to military relations. I speak from my own experience, and I know in the 2015 earthquake, because the Nepalese military was involved, General Gaurav Shamsher Rana was the army chief at that time. We had General Suhag, also a Gurkha officer on the Indian side. And so the relationship was so good, everything worked seamlessly. So I think I would like to highlight the importance of military diplomacy in the context of humanitarian support as well.
Right. I think when Gareth Evans and the United Nations articulated that idea of responsibility to protect, short form R2P, and there is, I think when we're talking about the military being at the local level in the context of disaster, it becomes very important. In the context of violence and civil war, that might have little different impact as well. So in the African context, that have been different impact. And a military and a militia, both have been fighting. So my next round of question is just this caveat. So when I met Gareth Evans in Australia, I asked him that, sir, why can't we have a G2C, R2C? He said, what do you mean by R2C? I said, responsibility to care. So responsibility to protect, when we're saying, it sounds like patronizing at one level. And second level, you have been divinely ordained, the right, as you said, Tony Blair told, that we will go because we are the custodians of the democracy, human rights, values, United Nations, and all that. We'll go and protect people there. So R2C is non-intervention. You care with compassion, and then you ensure that resilience happens at the local level. Now that's a good idea. We should explore it. But R2P had a little more bias. Anyway, so coming back to our question, we started the round robin discussion like that. So Parajoliji, what do you think is the three major challenges in local context? As Ambassador Roy highlighted, at the local level, we have to be at the local level for effectiveness, resilience, and maybe sustainability. What do you think major challenge? Because there is one, national government, state government, local government, different languages, culture, terrain might be different, but issues might be similar, climate change, all that. Yeah.
I think maybe one point too, before I go to the ground level, what is happening globally at the moment, also adding to Ambassador Ranjit Ray's point, is these big powers are fighting and creating a problem, and the humanitarian are going and cleaning up the mess and saving lives. 10 million people had to move their houses, displaced as a refugee in Ukraine, and WFP and many other NGOs and other are feeding. And countries like, including India, joining to help support life-saving support. That's one. So therefore, peace is the solution. And diplomacy is fundamental in that. Peacekeepers play a very important role, India being one of the largest peacekeeper globally. That's number one. Number two is, always when you have a crisis, big crisis, resource is a challenge. And you have to generate resources. The local people who are already affected, they have nothing to share a lot of times. And unfortunately, a lot of these crises are happening in poorer countries. Unfortunately, And that's where the humanitarian intervention from outside come in. So therefore, support from region or outside is fundamental. And a lot of times, the diplomacy element comes in is also because there are tribal people, there are military issues, there is conflict happening in the region, and also the issue of sovereignty come in. I will tell you, I moved in as a humanitarian coordinator in Myanmar in 2008 after the cyclone Myanmar. Myanmar stopped all the aid coming to the country. So we use ASEAN as a partner, exactly to give the example, and created a tripartite group between UN, ASEAN, and government to open up dialogue and to put everything on the table in a transparent way. We are working with government, we are working with the local people, we are working with the regional. So building that element of trust is fundamental. And there was a reference to right to protect. In fact, the Burmese military knew that there were ships, military ships waiting outside to come in. And their intelligence told, so they didn't let even any life-saving aid to come. So, sometimes these are the challenges. I mean, look at the Russia, this grain from Ukraine. The global price of food rose. Tremendous crisis. Fuel price rise, food price rise, fertilizer price rise. Three major crises, which caused, a lot of chaos globally. But then the diplomacy, humanitarian diplomacy, negotiating free corridor, safe corridor, helped to take that food out and save many countries, etc.
Right. Thank you. I'll come back to the last round of your
Sure.
final thoughts. So coming back to Lalit sir. Same question. What are the three major challenges of localization,
So
of humanitarian assistance and support and work?
I'm very optimistic because today's world we are united through internet,
Closure.
internet, social media,
Yes.
and technology. I will say technology unites, whether it's a Tesla car or any other technology that unites the world. I cannot live without technological support of another country. So there may be some war here and there, otherwise, and the global stock market, trade and commerce. No, none of the country can survive separately. Maybe it is a cycle. So some time of war and conflict would come. But finally, I would say this new generation, they are more globalized because the social media, internet, and their thought process. So I think at individual level, this new generation will unite this globe. Thank you.
Okay. I think what I take from there, you said two points: technology and trust. Maybe two challenges at the level of, or maybe may not be challenges. They both can be opportunities as well. Right, Ambassador sir. What do you think? Because you have taken a very hard Machiavellian understanding of international relations, where we look at states as self-seeking entities looking for power, and in that context, they compete. Then, where comes of localizing support systems to get rid of or get out of humanitarian challenges? What challenges do you see? Three major challenges.
Thank you. One important thing I would like to mention, Mr. Ranjit is here in 2015. The India's support in the first country who come during the earthquake time, and it was such a quick, it was not relief, it was for rescue. And I think RDF it is called in India, right? NDRF, right. So that has arrived in 3-4 hours of the time. And at the time, our Prime Minister was in Indonesia, and Nepal's many of the system collapsed. When I was talking with the Home Secretary at the time, he was lost. There was no water, no telephone. Everything was in a no electricity, many things. And people are running on the street where it is safe and where it is not safe. People are running to the Ratna Park. At the time, people realized that. So what I found that at the people level support from India was tremendous. It's not only the government of India India, but the different states, the chief ministers, even the local people. During that time, I went to Sikkim to speak in a conference, and my teacher, Professor Baral, was with me. While we are talking in the Sikkim, and we said we are from Kathmandu, people tell us that we have sent you some goods. Did you get it? And that is same thing with the Siliguri Bazaar. So that was the tremendous, we see that our people, our CDOs receiving support in the border, and the ambassador's office in Birganj was such a effectively managing all from different corner of India's border. We have been receiving that support, and it was a, so what I see that there is a place of humanity, there is a place. It was not a call by the state, but the people themselves. So, and some support from China, from the Chinese government, from Tibet, and almost all Western countries. They come up. But the first and foremost support comes from India. And it was from state as well as from people.
I think you are
So,
making a valid point
yeah.
there. States can be self-seeking.
Yeah.
Individuals and communities can be
Yes,
selfless.
that is what I'm telling you, that during even COVID, many of our Nepalese people cross the border and get vaccinated. So it was not government to government cooperation, but it was from the people to people relation. So that is, although India was itself was affected badly, and India stopped exporting the vaccine, but at the time it was a big crisis. So in the look, as Parajuli ji said, that there is a place people are helping, even in Ukraine, even in different parts of the world, that the human values works. Even in the different crisis time, people go and work there. People help them. Even in different parts of the world. Even I found that in Bangladesh, Rohingya, a lot of volunteers from different countries are working there.
Yeah.
They are not paid. Some of them are working their own. So these values are still, I didn't say, but Mr. Ranjit said that when the country thinks that their human rights, their issues, like Tony Blair said that we have every right to intervene. It was during the Iraq war. There was no legitimacy of the Iraq war. And that is what President Bush and Tony Blair joined hands and attacked on a country
Right.
on very fake issues. So I mean that when the powerful countries, they are the mainstream, they are in the P5, they determine the issues in the different parts of the world. So that needs to be at the people level to create awareness, to speak on all these issues so the people can change.
I think an important point he's making, that the challenge of localization can be managed at the goodwill of people at one level. Second, the state's selfishness can be questioned by people's participation. So that's a kind of an alternative discussion from bottom up. Ambassador Rai, what are the three major challenges? Because you have seen earthquake and several other disasters as well. So how do you see, what are the major challenges at the local level? Taking the
So,
discussion?
I'm not a humanitarian expert, so it's very difficult to say what are the, but to me it seems planning, training, coordination. I mean, these are the critical issues that any government requires. I mean, you see, in the case of Nepal, what happened is, 2-3 days after the earthquake, large number of teams descended on Nepal. I don't know, from 30-40 countries, each with their own systems and equipment and language issues. And I must say, hats off to the Nepalese government, because they could coordinate this together with the United Nations extremely well. So you really have to, in order to handle a disaster, you have to train for it. You can't have an ad hoc response when a disaster happens. So it's very, very important that governments develop this capacity. Like in India now, we have an excellent capacity in terms of, we have a Disaster Management Act. And under that act, we have established many institutions. And this goes down to the state levels and then to district levels.
Odisha has been a good example.
Orissa is a very good, a couple of years ago, you remember the natural disasters on our entire eastern coast. I remember, in fact, at that one time in Orissa, all the support was coming from Andhra Pradesh, when Chandrababu Naidu used to be chief minister, but now Orissa is excellent, extremely well organized. So I think to me, that seems to be, these are the issues that, nuts and bolt issues,
Right.
that when a disaster happens, you must know what to do and how to do it.
Right. Thank you. A last word from you.
No,
Last.
I'll speak. 99 super cyclone. I was the
Little
superintendent,
closer.
I was the superintendent police of the same district, Jagatsinghpur, where 10,000 people died. I was the superintendent police. So that time our capacity was very low, but that is the watershed. Then we had Orissa Disaster Management Authority (OSDMA). Then Disaster Management Act came. Then Odisha, that time we got help from Andhra Pradesh. But now Odisha has built up the capacity. Now we send our disaster or RDF to West Bengal, to Andhra Pradesh, because we had built our capacity over a period of 20 to 30 years. So, and also to Nepal or to neighboring countries, even Turkey also they had gone. Therefore, the local level capacity is helping at global level. It is not that we are not helping each other. It is there, but it should be more visible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was a fascinating session. Sorry if I looked intimidating and interventionist. Thank you.